Alright, so rather than just draw this all out on the board, I'm going to try to show you the same process by drawing it on paper. So you've practiced your shading with the pen, like the last tutorial said, with the value scales, the 3 circles and the 3 long rectangles for value scales. And now we're developing our thematic pen drawing. So today we're going to talk about how to build a decent composition. All the examples we just looked at, all of them are balanced out really well, meaning you don't have like, a ton of stuff on one side, or there's stuff that's not too small and too big. So everything is balanced out well. So you have to do 4 practice compositions. I would just take a piece of sketchbook paper and divide it into 4 pieces here, 4 quadrants. And remember, the project we're doing, you're going to have a border. So you want to kind of simulate that border. When we go on 12 by 18 piece of paper, it's going to be like a 2.5 or 3 inch border. But for this, I know that seems like a very small square. Maybe make a little bit bigger on the next one. This is just an estimation. These are what illustrators or graphic designers would call thumbnail sketches. Thumbnail sketches are usually a little smaller than this, but this will give us what we need to do to begin getting an idea of how we want to place stuff, where we want to place stuff. I'm going to use chess pieces, as this is going to be my theme for this drawing. How do we get from this point, from the idea, the concept stage, to this point right here, to a finished work? Okay, this didn't just happen. It's actually not quite finished. I still need to do some shading with pen on that. It went through a development process of small thumbnail sketches of arrangement. How am I going to arrange these things? Here's another practice one that just got really, really busy. But how do I get there? Well, I'm going to take a simple piece, and I would encourage you guys to find something easy to start with. Like in this case, the rook. It's very important to have the object with you, at least a couple of them, so that you can turn it around and look at it and be like, all right, well, if I want this, if I have the rook coming out of the top right side of my composition, I need to look at it and see the angles and see the light, how that's affecting that. So one concept on this, I always tell students, if you remember back to your 1-point perspective studies, like if I'm going to put a dot right here in the middle of my composition there, and if you can kind of envision this doesn't have to be a technical perspective thing. Everything doesn't have to line up onto that point, but sometimes it helps you to visualize it. Like if I was to draw a couple of lines out from this, and I'm imagining that I'm going to conform this piece into that basic perspective, that's kind of helpful for me to imagine that. So as the pieces come out, and go to different arrangements, you can envision it going toward a point in the center. So for this particular piece, it's a very simple start. I'm just going to start with what's closest to me, which is going to be the top of this. It's basically a circle, but it's not going to be a circle flat on. It's a circle that's tipped, so it's an ellipse. So basically I'm going to start with a kind of an oval shape to represent this outside of this. And then I'm just going to double it up. And then use my understanding of edges and contours and just sort of get a real general layout of the top of this piece here. Inside I have another contour. So you guys will notice right off the bat, this is a very rough, very impromptu type of sketch. This is just to get the idea of where stuff is going to land. And then this angles down into here. You guys don't even have to do this with me. I'm just showing you how I would go about it. This piece is angling down in here. And then it gets a little wider. And then the base again, just curves like this. So this seems to be kind of dominant. Maybe I want to make that a little bit smaller. Maybe I want to make it coming out maybe a little bit taller in a different way. We can go through all those things. That's the point of these sketches here. How about a knight? Where would the knight naturally fit? Where would it look good? Maybe straight up and down like this, maybe smaller, maybe tipped this way. I've got several pieces I want to work with here. I want to make sure I get the queen in there, and the rook's already kind of dominating the composition, so maybe I could put her back behind this to kind of balance out some of the space. So what's the general shape of the queen? Well, it's, just angling down like this. That's the basic outline shape for her. Just kind of a ring around here, and the crown shape would be up there. So I can see how those two pieces would be interacting. There's kind of a blank space down here, so obviously that's the next part I kind of want to target. How do I want to do that? Maybe I have a pawn toppling out like this. Whatever objects you guys are using for your thematic pen drawings, these are the things you need to start thinking about. How will they interact with each other? How will they be arranged? I'm going to make this guy a little bit smaller, and he's going to be kind of toppling out down like this. Basically, there's a ball right here. So, kind of a sphere shape like that. It's angling back from my view. So again, I'm sort of targeting that middle vanishing point. Just keeping it real simple. Maybe that's the pawn. Maybe I want another pawn, because there's lots of pawns in the game, and maybe he's going to be real small back here. So change the proportional relationships. It's kind of working. But I don't even have some of my favorite pieces in there, like the knight and the king. Just in my mind, I'm kind of trying to estimate where things will land. Maybe I could have a knight before I move on to a different compositional idea. The knight's just going to be over here somewhere. And you can see it's jumbling up too much over there already. That's why we do thumbnail sketches. Maybe I have more of an idea that they're going to be, maybe I'm going to go vertical. And the composition is going to be more like a chessboard. I think this is the process I worked through as I was doing the chess design, and I kind of used, again, like a one-point perspective idea, where the lines are closer together as they're further apart, and they get a little bit separated out like this. So basic perspective here, and there's kind of a chessboard layout, and I want the pieces to be a little bit more upright. So I'm going to start with my knight this time, a circle base, and the general shape of the knight. Over here, maybe I want the queen, some piece of the royalty, maybe the king or the queen, to be kind of looming in the background to have a sense of dominance. So this is how you work through ideas. These are thumbnail sketches. There's so many variations you can choose from, and if you don't do this, you're never going to know what to throw out and what to keep. Very rarely will you be able to just make a good composition without any planning. So plan stuff out. Here's a perspective thing that you should just be aware of, since we're doing kind of perspective drawings. It's called perspective by placement. So if I have this piece here, this pawn, let's say I drew it about an inch tall, about this size right here. If I drew it the exact same size, but placed it up higher on the composition, it's going to look further away, just by placing it higher. It's perspective by placement. So if the base of this is lower, this already seems more forward than this, because we know what happens to stuff in space. So here, exact same size. If I put the exact same size of that piece and just moved it up, it's going to look further away. But of course, I would probably make that one a little bit smaller if I wanted to keep true to the reality of perspective. Let's see, I haven't put a bishop in yet. Maybe I want to have the bishop toppling out this way. So again, if I have the piece here with me, I can look at it. Because these are kind of exaggerated perspective, I want this part that's closest to me to be bigger, so I'm going to make that pretty big up here. Kind of an oval looking shape. Ring around it. Maybe that's falling down behind that other pond. I don't know. If it works, it works. If not, we throw it out. Maybe we keep part of that idea. Maybe we throw part of that idea away. This is how you develop things. You can see these were more thumbnail sketches. Like here was a tipped up chessboard with pieces all toppling out. Here was a different arrangement of the pawns, one pawn going up, one pawn coming down. The castle had more structure. Here this piece is toppling over. I ended up going with something that had a little more stability to it. You know, something like this one. This was a more fun rendition of that, where I just got busy and finished that one. It was for the art challenge on YouTube. But here's the finished piece. Again, not quite complete, but you can see how I decided to arrange it. I wanted to put the knight up here in the front. I have a very distinct light source coming in from this side, and the king and the queen are still maintaining their presence. I still have to finish shading that with a pen, but once you get some decent compositions done, you should have an idea of where you want to go. If you do not have your stuff here with you today, just take something in the art room, like a mug or a pair of scissors or something that you can find, and practice sketching on it. And what I mean by that, just for the sake of not wasting your time, because if you build compositions of stuff that you're not going to draw with, that's kind of a waste of time. But it is definitely not a waste of time to shade with a pen, to apply what we did with the value scales to an object. So for example, if I was going to try to, I'll do it with an easier piece for the sake of demonstration. Let's say I was going to practice shading this with a pen. Well, I would draw the object. I'm going to try to draw it in a little bit of a tipped perspective too. Just again, everything that we do should lend itself to the overall production in the end. So I'm not just doing busy work. All this stuff will come into play. So I do a simple sketch of an object, do it in pencil first, because we are going to build our compositions with pencil first. And now look on here and target the areas of light. Do you guys see these two highlights right there? You're going to be doing this on almost all of your objects. There's two highlights right there. So I outline them. Another highlight right here. I'm targeting the highlights first. There's a highlight that runs all the way down the side of the pawn. I wish my autofocus would do its job. Maybe I don't have it set right. There we go. There's a highlight running right down here. So I just capture that first. There's a highlight right here. See those lighter areas? How about a little bit of shading? You can do some shading with your pencils, but don't go crazy with it, because if you put a ton of lead on there, you're not going to be able to cover it up with the pen. See how this area of the pawn is darker? Well, I can do a little bit of hatching and cross-hatching to kind of capture that sense of shadow on there. A little bit of darker over here, A little bit darker over there. And now I'm ready to start shading with the pen. I'm going to be promoting the Micron pens today. These are sold on Blick Art Materials, by the way. This is a number 1. That's the smallest point that you can get. And we've already practiced shading with the pen, so this should not be new to you. Here it is, you're just applying it. So I'm going to leave those highlights alone, and I'm going to come over here and start with some basic hatching and cross hatching. Keeping it real dark in the shadowy areas and gradually moving it up toward the light. You don't really have to outline your highlight. You can get a sense of it by just going around it. We'll come back and we will erase those pencil lines when we're all done. So my eye is going back and forth from looking at the object to looking at the paper. A lot of the times using the object as my reference. There's a nice cast shadow right here that I missed. So practice shading objects with pen. You don't want to do this for too many days because then you'll fall behind. If you have your stuff here, you should be starting to develop your compositions. I think you guys can see where we're going with that. Beautiful day in Missouri. God bless.